Hi.
Hey, didn't see you there.
I'm with Vogue. I'm here to ask you 73 questions.
You're in the right place. Come on.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for doing this for us.
My
my
pleasure.
gosh. I want to start off by saying how proud we are of you over at the U.
Thank you.
You graduated back in 2016, was it?
Yes.
Yeah,
very
it
good.
was 2016,
Yes.
and since then you've accomplished so much. I mean, I'm gonna quickly go down this list because 2020 Ellie's award winner, a creative recipient, home and away residency, 2019 recipient of the WAVE grant. I mean, Basel. The list could go on and on. So I can't believe that you made time to share your space with us. So thank you so much. And again, we are so proud of you.
Thank you. You're
And
welcome anytime.
oh my gosh, great. So what have you been up to? Like, so this is the Bakehouse. We'll start there.
Sure.
So how long have you been here?
So I started a residency at the Bakehouse in 2017. So what is it, like 4 or 5 years now?
Mm-hmm.
And I basically was invited to be a resident here to manage the ceramics practice for the other residents. And what that entails is making sure the kilns are running, making sure people are using the equipment properly, making sure everyone has everything they need. And I've built kind of a mini program here.
I heard.
Yeah. So,
It's amazing.
yeah, it's a communal kind of ceramics practice where we all contribute. We pay for firings. There's money that goes into a fund to help kind of manage the facility, and so that way it's self-sustaining. And it's really exciting because a lot of people here, there are some people that primarily do clay, but there's a lot of artists that do all different types of media that are interested in ceramics. So it's been really, really fun to kind of work with these other artists and introduce them to a new medium and teach them how to use kilns. And it's been a nice way to just orient myself with the Miami community and people doing clay.
Oh my gosh.
And I have this studio here. I'm very fortunate to occupy Studio 22. Had a long list of residents before me, and I love it.
Well, give us a little tour because this is kind of, I call it, because I've been in the Bakehouse before. I interviewed Jenna a while back, and I know a lot of you artists that are here. I call it almost like a hippie commune for artists. Is that how it is? Is it just like a family, like, at least when it's working, like right?
It's a big squabbling family. I guess like crunchy granola in terms of the community. I think that there's a couple of different residencies here in Miami. You've got Fountainhead, you've got Oolite, and then there's other breakaway studios like Laundromat.
Yes.
But the Bakehouse I think it's the largest, it's the oldest, and I just think we have such a great community here of different artists that come together. We also have programming, we have gallery spaces, there's an administrative component, so it kind of, it's sort of the glue that holds us all together, and everyone is really willing to share. There's such a great community here. It's one of our biggest assets.
Oh my gosh. So show us around. Like I just want to peek in to your studio and what you do, like if there's a ritual and how often you come here to work. I mean, do you pretty much live here?
So I was teaching at a couple of different institutions over the last few years as an adjunct. I'm happy to report now that I am full-time in my art practice, so I come here mostly every day. As a self-employed person, I work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Always and never working is kind of the joke. Sometimes I get paid, sometimes I work and don't get paid. Sometimes I get paid a lot, sometimes I don't get paid a lot. So,
Life of an artist, right?
life of a business owner.
Yeah.
Right, so a lot of my practice, believe it or not, one of the myths that I like to debunk for students is that most of our time is taken up by administration,
Yeah.
which is what people don't like to hear. And what I mean by that is emails, writing proposals, writing grants, doing accounting, doing photography, doing social media. So a lot of that takes up a chunk of my time. And then when I have a project like an exhibition or a grant or a commission, that's when I really dive into the studio and get some work done. So you've caught me at a really nice time for an interview because I'm in between projects, which means I've been doing a lot of grant writing. It's grant writing season, spring, usually January to like April is when all the proposals go out. So my studio is very clean.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna
Which is
take a
unusual.
look around
So,
here.
I don't have a lot of finished work in my space. Most of the objects in here are molds, prototypes, materials, glazes, buckets, wet boxes, slip, all different types of things, which I try to organize as much as possible.
It's like a candy store. Like, look at this.
Yeah, I think if you've seen my work, which I know you have,
Of course.
I do a lot
I'm
of
a big
modular
fan.
things. So organizing things, I'm a little bit of a type A psychopath. So I like to try to organize all of my materials as best as possible so that we can find them, right?
Right.
I always like to say the difference between a collection and a hoard is organization.
Oh my
So
gosh, that's a great way to look at it.
I'm constantly fighting the hoard. So it's a lot of
God.
purging. This is my mold library, which I think is like the nicest part.
This is so cool.
It's like the more organized. So I just did a mold purge, which is always really satisfying. That's when you throw away all the stuff you don't use. So my work has changed a lot in the last 5 years. I wouldn't say drastically, but I've gone from just making geometric work to incorporating textures from the environment, beginning with different types of flora and fauna in South Florida, and now expanding into underwater marine ecosystems, which is really exciting, and 3D printed technologies.
Now-
I'll talk a little bit more about that when you're ready.
Yeah, there's a lot of nature, right, in your work. You obviously have this big connection to nature. How did that come about? Is it something that has followed you your whole life? Is it something that just means so much to you, and it's a way for you to incorporate it in the work? Because I see it. I mean, just your piece in Fairchild.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was a work all about nature. I think most people like nature, even if they don't like to be in nature, especially with issues of climate change and the way that the environment is going and how we're kind of separating ourselves from nature, especially in places like the city of Miami in particular. There's a lot of development. My backstory is I grew up in South Florida. When I was 7 years old, my parents enrolled me in the Girl Scouts.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So, and interestingly enough, one of my biggest collaborators, who's a marine ecologist at the University of California in Northridge, was a Girl Scout with me at 7 years old. So we've known each other for like 25 years. And she went off to become basically a champion of coral reefs.
Yeah.
And my work obviously has followed that sort of path into nature, so we've been collaborating a lot with that. But as kids, we spent a lot of time in the outdoors. That troupe was located in Boca Raton, which I don't know if you know where that is, but it's like very kind of bougie. And so it was a lot of these little girls and their mothers who were so disconnected from nature. The parents had like an interest, obviously, in enrolling the kids in something that had more nature, so they forced us to go out into the Everglades and northern Florida and go canoeing and do trash pickups and spend a lot of time in the outdoors. So I think that really shaped the work that I make, for sure. And then when I was at UM, I was doing a lot of modular geometric forms that thinking about Ernst Haeckel and different types of scientific, especially Ernst Haeckel, who does these really amazing, I wish I had a book for you here, drawings of basically things under a microscope, flora and fauna, all the way from micro to animal kingdom. So these sort of geometric shapes was a way for me to express different types of patterns in nature and organizing things in an organic way. So the last couple of years, I've started to introduce into that foundational geometry in the sculptures that I make different types of nature textures.
Yeah, I see it in your work. I mean, the leaves are so beautiful, and you capture it so well. Just in these pieces, it's this, they come to life in a way. So
I
it's
try.
Yeah, but they're absolutely stunning. So what's your ritual? Like when you come in the morning, do you get to work? Is there music? Is there a podcast?
Like how to start the creative process?
How to start the creative process? Like what does that mean for you?
So I work in cycles, obviously, as I explained earlier with the grant writing cycle. So I have a hard time doing administrative stuff in the studio. I typically do it at home. So on a great day, if I don't have any grants due or any accounting to do, I'll go to a yoga class early in the morning, which is like an amazing way to start the day. And then I'll come in here in the morning. I work best in the daytime on anything, writing, artwork, anything. And that switched as I got older, unfortunately. I used to be more of a night person, but I think the daylight is so much better for first thing in the morning. All your energy and your creativity goes into whatever it is you're doing. So on a good day, like right now, I'm a little bit at the beginning of the process. I haven't started anything. I have a bunch of different things that I need to do. I think what I'll probably start doing first, since I've had a little bit of a break, is working on different types of molds that I've been casting from coral reef ecosystems.
Yeah.
And I can show you
please.
One of the examples of this. These are some additional tiles. My Ellie's project was
I have to tell you, I love that piece. It's one of my favorite pieces. Yes, it's one of my favorite pieces. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's not bad.
It's absolutely beautiful. Come on. It's, oh gosh, like when I saw it up and the photos don't do it justice, you guys. Like when I saw it up close, it's just so beautiful. It's rose gold quartz. It just makes me think of quartz. Exactly. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the glazes were a little bit different. These are some of the, I guess we call them the rejects. The Ellie's project, I'll explain a little bit more about that.
Please.
It was a grant that I won from Oolite in 2021, something like this. And it was basically to take these 3D scans of coral reef ecosystems, turn them into molds, and then cast them into these different tiling systems that would reveal the beauty of underwater ecosystems, right? Because South Florida, we had a lot of these different types of coral reefs that eventually were eroded and died off, unfortunately, because of the development here, the warming of the oceans. So I wanted to bring that back to the landscape. And this is where my collaborator comes in from the University of California and actually the University of Hawaii, where the scans originated. So this is the resulting tile. I ended up boosting my budget. I applied for a program called No Vacancy.
Yes.
Sponsored by the city of Miami Beach.
Yes.
And that was amazing.
Congratulations.
So I got that one. Then they gave us 2 months to produce it. So it's always the same with these types of like projects with these fast turnarounds. So I was trying to think, how could I take up the most amount of space in the least amount of time? And I got really ambitious. I measured the kilns here. The maximum size I can go flat is 18 by 18. And so it was a steep learning curve, as you can see. I tried different methods of building these. These had, this was one of the first versions. I thought maybe by slip casting them it would go faster and I would build these bridges, but unfortunately, as you can see, I encountered a lot of cracking. And I've done, this is the tricky thing with ceramics, is that you can have an idea, the execution, there's so much that can go wrong in the process, so you have to be
very so patient. Delicate.
Chemistry, different types of clay bodies, different types of things. So I ended up finding the most success by just slip casting them very thin with no braces or anything. So that had less cracking, but what I was encountering was a little bit of a slumping in here. So you can see that they're kind of bending inwards. So
I love that.
Yeah, no, it works.
It
gives
movement.
it more movement.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. I think totally. That was difficult, but good for me for trying something so massive.
Absolutely. It's really beautiful.
I'll show you the solution to these different types of problems that I discovered. I was doing hand pressing method. This is a hand forming method in a mold. This is also a CNC'd mold that was cast with plaster, and this helps mitigate the cracking and that slumping by putting a brace.
Yes. Okay.
So it takes it takes longer to make. So I would either have to form the mold in a different way or just hand press all of them. So these are things that I'm investigating in my work, is mitigating technical difficulties.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that, because what's your advice? Because I know you've worked with students forever. And I know many are really precious about their work, but there's accidents that can happen. How do you handle it? Like, do you go back to the drawing board? Is it just like an exorcism and you just kind of have to yell and cry and scream and then move on? Like, how do you deal with that?
I think it's just, if you have a burning desire to continue the project and it can't leave your mind, then you will go back and solve it by trying different things. It's really like trial and error. You can ask people that have done it before, which I've done. I learned to do this digital mold making at a digital fabrication lab at Anderson Ranch. with like a fabrication, an artist that uses a lot of this type of work. His name's Del Haro.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed his work for a long time, so I got to take a workshop with him, and this is where I learned how to do this type of tile pressing. So you can see here, even here, this is a mold that was actually CNC'd, and you can see the tool path, which I really like.
I love that. It just gives a texture, like, oh.
It gives it a little bit more movement, a little more pattern. So,
Right.
and even in these molds here, you can still see some of that tool path, which I don't really mind. I kind of like that. It shows like the evidence of the process.
Right.
And I
Right.
can show you the CNC mold. This is what that looks like. So this
Whoa.
is, I made a composite of all these different 1/4-inch sheets of blue foam, and then worked with a digital designer to basically surface the texture of an ecosystem that was in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah.
What I didn't know is that this particular location, the project's called Site or 16 Transect 1, which is the location of this reef.
Yeah, the title is just wild.
Very sciencey.
Very sciencey.
But what I learned about this reef, I didn't know at the time, is that it's located in a national monument that's a treasure of Hawaii. It's a sacred space that only scientists and natives are allowed to visit.
Wow.
And in 2000, I want to say 16 or 17, a hurricane went really far north. They never go that far north. They believe it was strengthened by warmed waters of climate change, and it completely decimated these big, beautiful shelving corals. So these type of corals. Now this is also like a little bit flattened. Typically they have a lot more dimension in the scan. But basically these corals had grown for like 1,000 years. They were massive, and the hurricane just flattened it. There was nothing left.
Wow.
So it was a bit of a memorial. And so by putting that in that shrine and that golden frame on South Beach, it was like a sarcophagus. It was kind of like an ode to, you know, the development of Art Deco on South Beach, and enshrining this sort of like ghost coral colony that no longer exists. So it ended up being quite successful. And now I'm trying to figure out different ways of using these different types of molds to mitigate cracking or different formations. I really like the one that I did at Fairchild. You can see a photo here that I've printed.
I love this.
This piece
This
was
is so stunning.
That's an unfired clay piece that I did years prior, which kind of paved the way to working with architecture without dealing with any of the cracking. And these were the plans for the project. This was my Night Arts Challenge Award.
Yeah.
Called Garden Portals. And this piece here ended up at Fairchild. And so I've been using these different modules to kind of play with pictorial space and architecture using glaze and texture. So that's kind of the direction I'm heading in with these tiling systems.
It's just even like these is so beautiful.
So those are drawings. That was one of my Ellie's pitches a couple years prior, which is funny because I didn't get funded, but ironically enough, you know, when I put these renders on my wall, I'm sort of wishing them to come true, and now I have a public art commission that's taking place in South Miami-Dade that's going to be using concrete tiles and combining plants that will grow. So that will happen next year when they break ground.
So this is almost like it's just a mood board with the planning stages.
Yeah,
Do you
know,
draw
I
it out
think-
first?
I think I can show you a little bit behind the scenes. I don't know if you can see
Yes.
this here. I work with a digital designer. This is a platform called Miro. Tell me if you can see this. This is really quite cool. So a lot of the projects that I do are very expensive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it involves a lot of pitching and funding and renders and experiments in the studio until I have a budget to create something that is large or public-facing works. And so this is kind of like the planning board, and I can show you a little bit the behind the scenes of that. In Miro, it's an interactive software that architects use.
How cool is this?
And so the person that I'm working with is like a master digital artist, and basically we took these different files, these convex hull models from different scientists, to basically take 3D scans of these different corals. Like for example, this one here was 3D printed. If you look to your right here, this is the 3D printed version, which then ended up into a mold, which ended up into different ceramic sculptures. And that's just like a test of
That's
that.
amazing. So these are the steps then.
So these are the steps, but it originates from an actual real coral model. loaned by scientists. And the nice thing is there's just like infinite textures of the corals. So that's been primarily what I've been focused on. This is the site that I was telling you about, site R16 Transect 1 in the French Frigate Shoals. It's a little bit of a low-res photo, but this is a digital scan of what that reef section looked like that doesn't exist anymore. And working with a scientist who works at the University of Hawaii who does data science and these different types of 3D scans, there's an open source database that I've been pulling from these different models using my contacts at the university to basically source these 3D models. And then they end up getting flattened out by the 3D artists that I work with and translated into tiles that can be either 3D printed or CNC routed. And so here are different versions that we've gone through.
Oh, wow. I see.
And so the nice thing about working in the digital world is
Do you add color then?
she is actually adding, like, here's an example of like a tessellation that we worked on to see what that looks like. The nice thing is you don't have to make it IRL, so to speak, and you don't waste, I pay her hourly, so I'm paying for the designs, which I can then source from at any time to sort of see what these different things look like. Like, here's an example of one of the tiles that tessellate. So she kind of like tessellated it as opposed to a landscape. Because if you made a landscape, like here's an example of this one. I'll show you the 3D scan. This is a 3D printed version of that landscape, and it becomes a tile. And so this was the first test that I did using the PLA as the prototype. And then it ends up becoming a ceramic tile. And so this is not this one per se, this one actually, this is the model, so you can see.
Oh, I love this.
So this is the PLA version, which I've blocked all the undercuts, as you can see. The 3D printed version gets a lot more detail than the CNC foam. So this is kind of like the micro version. And then this is sort of like a hollow kind of test tile that could then be turned into a landscape or to tile furniture or different types of things. I'm also working with a design gallery right now, so it's caused me to think about my work in more functional ways. Which was always like a dirty word in art school, but
I'm sorry. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I love
talk about commercialism in art school, and you should.
That's just. Here's the thing. But is that reality?
I think that as a student, and this is what I've always told students, is to, when you're forming any business, you have to believe in your product.
Right.
And art school is this perfect little bubble where everybody cares about your work and everybody has something to say, and you have all this attention on developing why your work is so important and so special and so interesting and so thought-provoking. And that's a really great time to form your product. Right? Your vision, your mission statement. Thinking about making work that people are going to want to buy in art school is a little bit of a waste, I think, of the investment. Unless you really want to go into like commercial type of work. For me, it was more, I found a lot of value in kind of shielding myself from that world and just focusing on building the mission statement, so the artist statement.
The artist statement.
And it was a really great time to practice slip casting and mold making and going through all that trial and error. And I guess I'm lucky because I'm attracted to things that are like a little bit more minimal and sophisticated and lends itself really well to design. So I did have some success right out of grad school selling some pieces. Designers love my work.
Yes, because I've seen, so I'm a fan of, I have a lot of design magazines that I look at, I'm constantly, and I see your work, and it's stunning. And it's beautiful. It's just beautiful in the space.
I'm lucky that my work is very pretty and that.
But there's, is that a dirty word, you think?
For some people, perhaps. I guess I do feel a little bit of guilt about it, right? Because on the other token, trying to use the visual vocabulary, for me, like, I care a lot about, obviously, the environment and care about, issues threatening the environment, and that's kind of my mission statement. So my tactic is to kind of draw people in with beautiful things and then kind of deliver a message that will, I aim to inspire, as opposed to like, some people are really activists, right? They like really try to shake people up, but my method is more like inclusive, bringing the community into building these works so that they have some agency and they feel some ownership in the process, and they're inspired. And so I'm more of like, I try to be more uplifting.
Well, there's something about your piece that makes people want to come closer. Do you know what I mean? So they won't know about that unless they see something that they like in it. Do you know what I mean? Like if they find it attractive, which it is, your work is very attractive and beautiful, and then they want to know more, right? So I think it's a way to look at it. It's just your way of doing it is not with a sledgehammer.
Sometimes when I'm destroying the works, I don't know. I'll show you a little bit more behind the scenes of what I'm working on now. So I've been working with this design gallery, so you might recognize this piece.
I do. I recognize the space.
This was in the University of Miami. This was a project that I did as part of my MFA thesis exhibition. It was called Polygon.
One of my favorite shows there, honestly. It was just so beautiful.
As you can see, I was obsessed with geometry. And this is another piece I made, I think, when I was finishing up school there as well. And so I've been using, these are some ways of digitally designing molds to be able to make these different shapes. How I used to do it was with origami paper.
I remember that.
Which is like a way of preserving things that were a little bit more ephemeral, and like some of the inspiration is crystal forms and stalagmites and stalactites. So my idea is to create something functional as a chandelier.
Yes.
And so this is a big, beautiful, expensive render of a chandelier. And this is something that I'm going to be developing in tandem with the gallery. And so with this other designer, I've been exploring different types of coral forms, right? So we've been sort of exploding these forms and creating different types of models. As you can see, it's literally infinite. These different models are so beautiful and so interesting, all from 3D scans.
Right. Oh my gosh.
So as we've been working on them, this is a way for us to kind of communicate on the board. And
this looks like jewels.
they look like gemstones, and and this is some of the 3D models that you can pull from the internet, and every angle is just so interesting and beautiful.
These are all unique, right?
These are actual scans of corals, and they're taken by, these are all open source. You can get them on Sketchfab. You can find them in different locations on the internet that you can pull from. Luckily, I have permission from the scientists to use these for what it is that I'm doing, but these become sort of the inspiration and forms for the solid forms. So most of these probably won't work for me. Like I said, it's very infinite, like the amount of things that I can do. So we've been playing with ideas of different types of coral forms for chandeliers. And so this is some of our behind the scenes sketches. Wow. And these are some of the prototypes that I'm using to build the chandelier forms. I'm now working with cut foam as prototypes instead of paper models, which you can see here on this shelf. These are different types of crystalline forms out of foam that get blocked and cast into different types of molds, as well as more modular shapes that will form, like the basis of the lamp or the chandelier, larger forms. And this has been a really great way for me to expand and make larger models. And then here's a bit of a test for potentially making coral form chandeliers.
Wow, this is stunning.
Yeah, so that was kind of a test. So recently, that was the last project I did, was intermixing one prototype of a coral, a passalabra coral from the Pacific Ocean. I was fortunate enough to go out with the scientist of French Polynesia. It was terrible and awful going to Tahiti, let me tell you.
What?
Tahiti's awful.
Can you?
Don't go
Okay, come on. You have to tell me why.
No, it's amazing, obviously, but I've been really lucky to be able to leverage kind of the work that I do to partner with scientists that go to these places. Specifically, French Polynesia, there is coral colonies there that are virtually pristine, right? They're lagoons, so the climate is perfect. They have, a lot of ways to kind of develop and thrive. There's different forms of the reef at different stages. There's like baby corals in the lagoon, and there's older corals. So Berkeley University has a research station there called GUM, and that's where a lot of the scientists go to conduct this research. They have access to the lagoon, they have a lab. So my collaborator, the girl from Girl Scouts, her name's Dr. Nissa Silbiger, which I've worked with, extensively over the last few years, brought myself and a filmmaker out basically to observe the research they were doing, cast corals, and this is where I met a lot of the scientists that loan these 3D models for casting. So that now, I'm pulling from these different resources that I've gathered from this research trip, which will inform the work that I do over the next couple of years. So it's a really great way for them to get outreach because I'm communicating their research to the work that I do, for me to pull inspiration from my own work. It's a really great relationship. So, and it's been a great way for me to travel to these amazing
gorgeous places because I've seen photos. So
yeah. So
now, how long do the projects take usually? Does it depend on the project? then do you have to dedicate years, months, or is it you work on multiple projects, or is it just one at a time?
Well, I can just give you an example of right now. Like right now, I'm in between projects. I don't have any due dates right now, except for prototyping these more commercial chandelier forms and functional forms for the gallery. So it's actually a nice place to be that I don't have any deadlines.
Yeah.
But usually at this stage, I'm kind of planting seeds. So it's a lot of right now is tax season, so doing my accounting, I'm applying for residencies, I'm looking into different types of grants, I'm doing a lot of writing, and I guess at this point exploring in the studio and casting different types of forms with all of these prototypes that I just made. These are all fresh molds, these blue forms. So I'm just now going to start building with them to try to make larger prototypes for the chandeliers. So that's what I'm working on right now. And in the meantime, if something comes up, like a no vacancy project, I have about 2 months to make a temporary public art sculpture.
Yeah.
Which I'm trying not to do so much temporary work anymore and hoping to do more permanent things.
Yeah.
Which take time to cultivate and examples to be made. So as I'm kind of building this from this library of molds and making different types of functional works, they get photographed, they get posted online, they get submitted with applications, they get sent to the gallery. So at any time, usually this is the season of planting the seeds and experimenting. Summertime is hopefully residencies, and then the fall is breakneck speed making work for Art Basel.
Yeah.
And that's when a lot of these things start to manifest. So, it's a bit of an ebb and flow. It's organic.
To me, I was amazed that you were so busy during this crazy time, during the pandemic. You were nonstop.
I was really fortunate to have some work during that time.
Yeah. How was it for you? Did it hinder you in any way? Did it? Because it just feels like the world stopped, and it's this never-ending pandemic that's never going away. And
right.
Is it just something that you kind of, I move forward and keep going?
I was very fortunate. I did not get sick. None of my family members were sick and died. Thank God. Everyone was healthy for the most part. It actually caused me to back off teaching and work more on my own stuff, which actually yielded more money. I hate to say it. Adjuncting is great, and I totally condone it for people who want a part-time job or love teaching or want to become a faculty someday. I love teaching, but right now my focus is to be an artist. I teach people through my practice, through the community projects that I do, so I get my teaching fix that way. Sometimes I teach a class here and there for fun, for joy, but when I put my nose to the grindstone and I apply and I make my work, money happens.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And before the pandemic, I had secured this grant, a couple of different grants that kind of came in right before. So rather than everyone was like, whoa, should we not go ahead with this? And I was like, no, we need to do this. So I pushed 2 massive social practice projects forward during a pandemic.
Yeah.
It took about, a couple years off my life, but it was really hard and really challenging. But, it really taught me about project management, about because all of that money is going through my business account, so being able to invoice people, organize receipts, do all that accounting stuff, balance my budget, and direct, really. So it's kind of really taught me a lot in a less than high stakes situation for public art, larger commissions, and things like that. So it was an amazing learning experience for me, and I'm super fortunate to have had that opportunity during a time when things were kind of paused, right?
Right. Yeah. It was just bizarre. It was
minus the whole pandemic thing, which was a bummer.
Yeah. Now, is there an advice that you would give students if they want to do what you do? Is there one thing that you would, if there's something that you wish you knew, any tips, tricks?
What I wish I knew is I wish I could go back to myself, 8-10 years ago and just tell myself that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I suffered a lot through grad school, which I think there's something very sensitive about being a grad student in general. I think as an undergrad, it's more exciting because you're exploring all these new materials and you're learning, but as a grad student, there's a lot of pressure, right? What am I going to do after I graduate? What is my work all about? Why should anyone care? You're getting poked and prodded at by faculty who have their own thoughts and opinions, which you kind of have to sift through. So I guess for grad students, just be open and just trust the process.
Yeah.
And if you can do an internship while you're in school, use the cushion of school to be able to go out and explore your local community, especially if you want to stay in Miami.
Right.
There's an amazing, amazing art community here, which, for future grad students hoping to attend UM, we have such an awesome opportunity. There's a full ride, you get paid, you get teaching experience, you have amazing facilities. And
it's actually a pretty remarkable thing, and it's you kind of feel like don't get down because this is such an amazing opportunity. Do you know what I mean?
I
know
super
it's hard.
grateful for the opportunity. It was kind of my Hail Mary. It got me out of my former life, which was trying to get to that next level. I knew I had to, I'm from Florida, right? So getting to Miami, it's an expensive city,
right?
Even more expensive now. So grad school is like a really great way. It was an investment for me, right? And I really reached out into the art community to try to find a community when I got out of that protected little bubble of grad school that I would have somewhere to go. And for some people it may not be Miami, and that's okay, but for me I wanted to be here, and so it worked out.
Now, so where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Hopefully rich and famous.
Oh gosh. And then I'll be really, really trying to do your 73
I don't need
questions.
To be famous, just rich.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I guess 5 years from now I hope that, having a place that's a little bit more permanent, owning a home would be like a milestone goal, having a more of a private studio, or being more embedded in whatever this becomes. The Bakehouse has a strategic 5-year plan to build live workspaces.
Oh, tell me about that a little. Oh, well, what you can tell me, because I know some stuff is confidential.
I don't know much. I don't speak for the institution, but from what they've disclosed to us is that, Miami has a housing crisis.
Yes.
Has a studio crisis.
Yes.
Things are very expensive. And so the vision for this place, because it's zoned for multiple story units, is that they want to turn it into affordable housing for both the community and the artists.
Really?
And
that's such a great plan.
It's a great plan. They need a lot of money to make it happen. It's going to take, city officials to really believe in the mission and why art is valuable in the community. Right?
Well, it's an important mission. I mean, you guys, artists just elevate the human spirit.
Yeah, but
it's needed.
Also, it's more about dollars.
Yeah,
so
that too.
How do we bring, how do we boost the economy? How do we contribute to the people living here? And why should anyone care? And that's really what, the people that are running this place and the artists are trying to help to contribute. I mean, I would love to be here helping to run a ceramics program in a more official way, or having, a private studio where I run my own thing. I don't know where I'll end up, but I love Miami, so I hope to stay here for a little while longer.
Well, would you move?
I don't like being cold.
Yeah, same.
So it would have to be a pretty special situation for me to move. And I love New York too, but not for long periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know. I mean, I'm a third generation, believe it or not, on my mom's side from Florida, so it's in my blood. But I do, and I get my fixes traveling all over the world when I can. But I love Miami. There's something about the nature here, the people, the vibe. I love it, so I hope to stay.
Well, what's your favorite place that you've been in terms of the residency? How was Anderson?
Anderson Ranch is amazing for the students or even faculty that want an opportunity. If you have some time to spend a month at that residency, it's basically like Club Med for artists.
Is it?
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to be accepted into the home and away program, so all of it was paid for. It was the nicest situation I've ever been in. Ulite took really good care of us. And sent 12 of us up there. It's an amazing ceramic studio.
Mm-hmm.
It's gorgeous, and I was able to go in the summer for a workshop, and I was able to go in the winter when it was Winter Wonderland. And the kilns, I've never seen such an organized kiln room in my entire life.
Wow.
UM's pretty good. They run a tight ship over there, but this was it was like 5 times the size of anything I've ever seen. They just have so much funding.
Oh my gosh.
An amazing gas kilns, car kilns, reduction kilns, 3D printing, fab lab, CNC, printmaking, painting studio, and it's just the amazing staff that are so helpful to teach you things. If you ever get an opportunity to go, there's scholarships, there's funding you can apply for, so I highly recommend that. That was an amazing experience. I learned a lot.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part about your studio? Because I have to say, you have one of the bigger spaces here.
I'm fortunate enough to have a larger space, which is really helpful, especially for a sculptor, or especially for a ceramicist. What do I love about my space besides everything?
Yeah.
If you look up at the ceiling, Bakehouse is an old Art Deco bakery. So it's a 100-year-old building that they're hoping to restore. It's a historical space. So when you're in here, because the open ceiling, you get this vibe of being like in Europe or
Yeah,
something.
it really is.
Or maybe Brooklyn or
Well,
more
it
of an
kind of
industrial-
reminds me, Spain has a place, Madrid has a place called the Matadero, which it was a converted slaughterhouse.
Right.
And it's the same,
That's creepy.
similar, yeah, really, really cool.
That would be creepy though.
But similar concept to the Bakehouse, which
Right.
is an old bakery.
Right.
So,
It's
I
an
mean,
industrial building. What I love about the Bakehouse, obviously, is the community. The kilns are, they're great. I've been able to build a little program there. Everybody gets along. We all kind of take care of it. So without having to own the building or own the equipment and still get all the privileges of using it, it's kind of like a little bit like a university experience.
is it? Yeah.
I mean, maybe a little better because I get to do whatever I want. But yeah, no, the community's wonderful. The hardwood floors are all parts of them are still original. So the historical feel of this place is really, really cool. And I get a little bit of natural light from the skylight, like the place.
I've noticed that. You have the skylight.
Yeah. So and I get to have all my stuff here. It's amazing. I get to have a space to work. I'm extremely fortunate. There's so many artists in Miami that are working out of their living rooms, and I've worked out of storage units. I've worked out of corners of people's spaces. I've worked out of my house. So I feel really, really privileged to have this space.
Do you find as an artist, it's so important to be flexible and work with you have? Like, how did you manage? Because you didn't always have this space.
No, I mean, when I graduated, I was working. I had to move all my stuff into a storage unit, and then I was working in a tiny corner of a photography studio, so I couldn't make much of a mess. And again, this was like was a bit of a Hail Mary for me. I kind of like slid in there. So I was lucky to get into that program. And then again, with this situation, I was about to sign a lease with somebody that wasn't the right fit, but I needed a space. And then this happened, like literally the same week. So I'm one of those people that, has the highest chance of winning the lottery, but also the highest chance of being struck by lightning. That's like just my whole life. It's always like the last minute phone call, the chance encounter, and that's just been the way it's gone. So for me, flexibility for sure. But being an artist is really hard, and there's no shame in doing it part-time. There's no shame in taking a break or teaching if you like to do that. There's a lot of benefits to being a faculty and being an artist. You also get a community and equipment.
The studio.
A studio and benefits.
Yeah.
Security.
Medical, dental.
Yeah, no, and that's great. I've always had a bit of a problem with authorities.
Yeah.
Full-time jobs I've never really had one. And I've managed to kind of hustle and make it, but it's hard. It's there's always going to be something existential about being self-employed. So for me, like, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Like, I love it so much that it's a bit of a fixation. It's almost like an addiction, actually.
Yeah.
And I can't stop. And so I've never really had to compromise that. I've worked other jobs, I've had different situations, but I've always been able to just do what I do, and now I'm doing it full time. So hopefully I can keep that up. We'll see how it goes over the next few years. You just have to be flexible, for sure. That's a great way of putting it.
Well, just to close on that, again, we are so completely proud of you.
Thank you.
You're amazing, and your work is beautiful, and you're doing such great things. You're an inspiration. So I think it's so important for people back home, meaning back in the U, to know what our alumni are capable of. So
Come on, visit anytime.
come see Lauren at the Bakehouse, and we'll leave all her information, deets below. So if you have questions, perhaps maybe you want to acquire a piece, just send her a quick DM, okay? So thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you so much for inviting us over.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you.